She walked into the break room for a normal shift and never walked out again. Minutes later, something inside that room would shock even seasoned officers. The windows were covered, the cameras were blocked, and what they found on the floor proved this wasn't random. Someone had been planning this and waiting for the perfect moment.
The 17-year-old's life was cut short, was killed while working at a Colorado Springs Walgreens.
On June 11, 2022, inside a Walgreens store in Colorado Springs, everything appeared completely normal. Customers moved through the aisles, employees handled their shifts, and nothing about the atmosphere suggested that a horrific crime was about to unfold just steps away. 17-year-old Riley Whitelaw was working her shift like she had done many times before. Known to everyone as Smiley Riley, she carried a warmth that made people feel comfortable instantly. Whether it was coworkers or customers, she had a way of leaving a lasting impression with even the shortest interaction. She was responsible, driven, and focused. A straight-A student with ambitions of studying forensic science, Riley wasn't just working a part-time job. She was building toward a future where she could help solve crimes just like the one she would unknowingly become a victim of. That day, however, something felt different. Not in the store itself, but in the presence of someone inside it. Joshua Johnson, a 28-year-old coworker, had been working at the same Walgreens. What initially seemed like a normal workplace relationship had, over time, turned into something far more uncomfortable. Riley had already reported his behavior multiple times. She had told management that he made her uneasy, that he crossed boundaries, that something about him didn't feel right. But nothing meaningful had been done. And now, on this day, everything would come to a breaking point. Earlier in her employment, Riley had filed a formal complaint after Joshua made inappropriate comments toward her. Instead of escalating the situation or involving authorities, management simply spoke to him and left it at that. No serious consequences, no protective measures. For Riley, that decision would have devastating consequences. As weeks passed, Joshua's behavior didn't stop. It escalated. He touched her inappropriately. He inserted himself into her tasks. He created an environment where Riley felt constantly watched and uncomfortable. She even requested to work different shifts to avoid him, sacrificing her own income just to feel safe. At one point, she confided in coworkers, openly calling him Pedo Joshua, a name that reflected how deeply disturbed she felt by his actions. But despite everything, she kept showing up to work. On June 11th, that routine continued. At approximately 5:30 p.m., Riley was told to take her break. Another employee swapped positions with her, and she walked away from the counter toward the back of the store. Surveillance cameras captured her heading in that direction. It would be the last time she was seen alive. As time passed, something felt off. Riley didn't return from her break. 15 minutes turned into 30. 30 turned into over an hour. Concern began to grow among employees. The store manager attempted to reach out, but there was no response. Then, something unusual was noticed. The camera that monitored the exterior of the break room had its view blocked. Large bins had been placed directly in front of it. When the manager reviewed earlier footage, the answer became clear. Joshua Johnson had moved them. At that moment, the situation shifted from concern to fear. The manager rushed toward the break room. When the door was opened, everything changed. Inside, Riley Whitelaw was lying on the floor. There was blood everywhere. The scene was so violent, so overwhelming, that it immediately confirmed the worst possible outcome. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a medical emergency. This was murder. Police were called immediately, and within minutes, officers arrived at the scene. As they began securing the area, employees started sharing what they knew, and one name kept coming up again and again: Joshua Johnson. But by the time officers began searching for him, he was already gone. An immediate manhunt was launched. As investigators processed the crime scene, more chilling details emerged. A handwritten sign had been placed on a nearby restroom door, marking it as out of service. It seemed insignificant at first, but combined with the blocked cameras and covered windows, it painted a clear picture. This had been planned. Inside another area of the store, a strong smell of bleach was detected. A coworker reported hearing a male voice from within, telling her not to come in because he was changing clothes. Investigators later concluded that this was likely an attempt to clean himself, to remove evidence, to erase what had just happened. But it wasn't enough, because Riley had fought back, and she had left behind evidence that would tell the truth. In the early hours of June 12th, nearly 100 miles away from the Walgreens, a patrol officer spotted a man walking along a roadway. He matched the description of Joshua Johnson. When officers stopped him, the signs were immediate. He had scratches across his body, visible injuries, and most importantly, blood. He was taken into custody. During questioning, Joshua attempted to construct a story. He claimed that an unknown attacker had entered the break room, assaulted both him and Riley, and that he had managed to escape. But the evidence told a very different story. The medical examiner's report confirmed that Riley had suffered 42 stab wounds. It also revealed something crucial. She had fought for her life. In her hands, investigators found strands of hair that matched Joshua. The scratches on his body aligned with defensive wounds. Every piece of forensic evidence pointed directly at him. There was no unknown attacker. There was no mystery, only the truth. And it was undeniable. As the case moved forward, the prosecution built a timeline that revealed clear intent and premeditation. Joshua had blocked the cameras, covered the windows, created isolation, and waited for Riley to be alone. It wasn't random. It was calculated. The motive became equally clear: rejection, jealousy, and obsession. Riley had refused his advances. She had reported him. She had tried to distance herself. And when she began dating someone else, his behavior became even more controlling and hostile. What followed was the final violent act of someone who could not accept that rejection. The trial began in September 2023. Inside the courtroom, the weight of the evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance footage, forensic reports, witness testimony, every element aligned to tell the same story. The defense attempted to maintain the narrative of an unknown attacker. They argued that Riley's complaints were exaggerated, that Joshua had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the facts dismantled that argument piece by piece. DNA evidence, physical injuries, the sequence of events. There was no room for doubt. After closing arguments, the case was handed to the jury. It took them just 1 hour to reach a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder.
But your own actions caught up to you. The fingerprints and DNA evidence caught up to you. Your attempts at concealment caught up to you. You will have the rest of your life to contemplate what you have done, the life you have destroyed, and the family and the community around that life that you have ruptured forever.
The courtroom fell silent. But for Riley's family, the moment carried both relief and overwhelming grief. Because while justice had been served, nothing could bring her back. At the sentencing, emotions reached a level that words could barely contain. Her family presented a powerful tribute: an empty glass vase, a bag of sunflower seeds, and 42 purple stones. Each stone represented one of the wounds inflicted on Riley.
These 42 stones represent the stab and incised wounds Riley endured.
One by one, family members placed them into the vase, not as symbols of violence, but as an act of love. A way to transform something horrific into something meaningful. a way to honor who Riley truly was. Joshua Johnson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He showed no emotion, no remorse, just silence. But outside that courtroom, something else began to take shape. Riley's story sparked change. Her name became part of a new law designed to protect victims, especially minors, from having their identities immediately exposed in public records.
Riley's light continues to burn bright, and her loved ones, friends, and Riley's mom have dedicated themselves to guarding that flame. Riley is not forgotten.
It was a response to the way her story had spread so quickly, often before her family had time to process what had happened. That law now stands as part of her legacy. But beyond legislation, Riley's impact lives on in something far more powerful. The people she touched, the lives she changed, and the memory she left behind. Because while this case is remembered for its brutality, it is also remembered for her strength, her kindness, her light, and the way she fought even in her final moments. What officers found in that break room was terrifying, but what they also found was proof. Proof that Riley did not go quietly, that she resisted, that she mattered, and that her story would not be forgotten. Because sometimes, even in the darkest places, the truth finds a way to speak. And when it does, it demands to be heard.